She was only trying to hide. But the cave system that Captain Amy Carter had fallen into was actually the enemy's most secret operations center. 12 days later, when she emerged, she carried information that would end the war. The story begins with chaos. October 15th, 2024, somewhere in the mountains of Eastern Europe, Captain Amy Carter wasn't supposed to be here at all. Her reconnaissance unit had been ambushed 3 days earlier, and she was the only survivor running through unfamiliar terrain with enemy forces closing in from every direction. Which city in the world are you watching this video from today? Please subscribe and support us for more stories. Amy had been a military intelligence officer for 8 years, but nothing in her training had prepared her for this moment. Behind her, she could hear the distant sound of helicopters and tracking dogs. The enemy was getting closer, and she was running out of places to hide. That's when she saw the cave entrance. It wasn't much, just a dark opening between two boulders, barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through. But with nowhere else to go, Amy dropped to her hands and knees and crawled inside, hoping it would provide temporary shelter until the search teams moved on. She expected a shallow cave, maybe 15 feet deep. What she found instead changed everything. The entrance tunnel extended much farther than it appeared from outside. Amy crawled forward in complete darkness, using her hands to feel along the rough stone walls. The passage seemed to go on forever, sloping downward at a steep angle that made her wonder if she would be able to climb back out. After what felt like an hour of crawling, the tunnel opened into a larger space. Amy couldn't see anything in the absolute darkness, but she could tell by the way her breathing echoed that she was in a substantial chamber. She found a corner where she could rest her back against the wall and tried to catch her breath. The silence was complete. No helicopters, no dogs, no voices shouting orders in languages she didn't understand. For the first time in 3 days, Amy felt relatively safe. She decided to wait here until nightfall, then try to find her way back to friendly territory under cover of darkness. But when she tried to retrace her path to the entrance, something had changed. The tunnel she had crawled through was blocked. Somewhere during her rest, rocks had shifted and sealed the passage. Amy felt along every inch of the blocked entrance, but there was no way through. The stones were wedged too tightly, and she didn't have tools to move them. She was trapped underground. Amy forced herself to stay calm. She was a trained soldier, and panic would only make things worse. She took inventory of her supplies, half a bottle of water, 2 energy bars, a small flashlight with dying batteries, and her sidearm with 1 full magazine. Not much for an extended stay underground. The first priority was finding another way out. Amy began exploring the cave system methodically, using her flashlight sparingly to conserve battery life. The main chamber where she had been resting connected to several smaller passages that branched off in different directions. The first passage she explored ended in a dead end, after about 50 yards. The second led to another chamber, this one filled with the sound of dripping water. Amy was relieved to find a small underground stream. At least she wouldn't die of thirst immediately. It was while exploring the third passage that Amy made her first disturbing discovery. The tunnel was different from the others. Instead of rough natural stone, portions of the walls were smooth and straight, too straight to be natural. Someone had been working down here, modifying the cave system for their own purposes. Amy's training in intelligence work had taught her to notice details that others might miss. The tool marks on the walls were recent. The passages had been widened and reinforced within the past few months. This wasn't an ancient cave system. It was an active construction site. But why would anyone be building something this far underground, in such a remote location? The answer became clear when Amy found the first metal door. It was set into the cave wall so seamlessly that she almost missed it in the dim light of her flashlight. The door was painted to match the color of the stone, and the hinges were carefully concealed. If Amy hadn't been running her hands along the walls as she explored, she never would have felt the smooth metal surface. Her heart began racing as she realized what this meant. This wasn't just a cave system. It was a facility, a secret facility that someone had gone to enormous lengths to hide. Amy tested the door handle carefully. To her surprise, it turned easily. The door opened to reveal a corridor that was definitely man-made, with concrete walls and electric lighting that flickered on automatically when she entered. She was no longer in a natural cave. She was in an underground military installation. Amy's intelligence training kicked in immediately. This was an opportunity for reconnaissance that could provide invaluable information about enemy capabilities and intentions, but it was also incredibly dangerous. If she was discovered, she would certainly be killed and probably tortured first. She decided to proceed carefully, gathering as much information as possible while looking for another way to reach the surface. The corridor extended in both directions from the hidden door. Amy chose to go left, moving silently and listening for any sounds that might indicate the presence of personnel. The facility seemed deserted, but she couldn't be certain. The first room she encountered was clearly a storage area, filled with wooden crates, stacked floor to ceiling. Amy used her flashlight to examine the markings on the crates. The text was in Cyrillic script, which she could read thanks to her language training. What she saw made her blood run cold. The crates contained components for nuclear weapons, not just any nuclear weapons, advanced warheads with yields far beyond anything she had seen in intelligence briefings. The technical specifications printed on some of the crates indicated weapons capable of destroying entire cities with a single detonation. Amy began taking photos with her phone, though she doubted the images would be useful without a way to transmit them to her commanders. Still, intelligence gathering was automatic for her, even in this impossible situation. The next room contained more crates, these ones filled with electronic equipment and computer components. Amy recognized some of the items from her technical training: guidance systems for ballistic missiles, communication equipment for coordinating multiple launches, and targeting computers capable of plotting trajectories across continents. This wasn't just a weapons storage facility, it was a command center for nuclear warfare. Amy spent the next several hours exploring the underground complex, mapping its layout and documenting everything she found. The facility was enormous, extending much farther than she had initially realized. There were workshops for assembling weapons, laboratories for testing components, and living quarters for what must have been hundreds of personnel. But where was everyone? The answer came when Amy found the duty roster posted in what appeared to be the main command center. According to the schedule, the facility operated on a rotation system, with personnel present for 2 weeks out of every month. Amy had stumbled into the complex during a scheduled maintenance period when most of the staff was away, but they would be back in 3 days. Amy realized that her accidental discovery had given her access to what might be the most important intelligence find of the entire war. This underground facility represented a nuclear capability that could shift the balance of power dramatically. But the information would be useless if she couldn't get it to her commanders. She began searching more urgently for another exit from the complex. The facility had been constructed with multiple entrances and exits for security reasons. Amy found service tunnels that led to ventilation shafts, emergency exits that connected to distant cave openings, and even an underground vehicle tunnel that must connect to a hidden road somewhere above ground. But all of these exits were secured with electronic locks and alarm systems that Amy couldn't bypass without triggering security alerts. She was trapped not just by collapsed rocks, but by sophisticated security measures designed to keep intruders out or in. Days passed as Amy continued exploring the facility while rationing her limited food and water supplies. She learned to move through the complex in complete darkness to avoid triggering motion sensors, and she discovered maintenance areas where she could find additional water and even some food supplies. The intelligence value of what she was learning increased with each new discovery. The facility contained detailed plans for coordinated nuclear strikes against multiple targets, communication protocols for coordinating with other hidden installations, and production schedules that indicated the enemy was preparing for a massive escalation of the conflict. Most disturbing of all, Amy found evidence that this facility was just one of several similar installations. The enemy had created an entire network of underground nuclear production and command centers, all connected by encrypted communication systems and coordinated by a central command structure. The war that everyone thought was winding down was actually about to become much worse. By the end of her first week underground, Amy had photographed thousands of documents and created detailed maps of the facility. She had learned the security procedures, identified key personnel through personnel files, and even discovered the communication frequencies used to coordinate with other installations. But she was also getting weaker. Her food supplies were nearly exhausted, and the stress of hiding in an enemy facility was taking a psychological toll. She needed to find a way out soon, or she would die underground with the most important intelligence discovery of the war. The breakthrough came when Amy realized that the facility's security systems were designed to keep people out, not to keep them in. The electronic locks that secured the exits were programmed to allow emergency evacuation in case of fire or other disasters. Amy found the facility's emergency systems manual and learned how to trigger a controlled evacuation alert that would unlock all exits while minimizing the alarm response. It was risky. The alert would be logged and investigated when personnel returned, but it might give her the opportunity she needed to escape. On the morning of her 10th day underground, Amy implemented her escape plan. She triggered the emergency evacuation system from the main command center, then ran toward the nearest exit as alarms began sounding throughout the facility. The electronic locks disengaged as designed, and Amy found herself in a service tunnel that led to a concealed exit nearly 2 miles from where she had originally entered the cave system. She emerged into daylight for the first time in 10 days, carrying intelligence that would change the course of the war. The information Amy had gathered led to coordinated strikes against the entire network of underground facilities. Within weeks, the enemy's secret nuclear capability had been eliminated, and their ability to continue the conflict was severely compromised. The war ended 3 months later, not through continued fighting, but through negotiations made possible by the intelligence Amy had accidentally discovered while simply trying to hide from enemy forces. Amy's 12 days underground had begun with a desperate attempt to avoid capture. They ended with her emerging as the intelligence officer who had prevented nuclear warfare and helped bring peace to an entire region. Sometimes the most important discoveries happen when you're not looking for them. The cave that had trapped Captain Amy Carter had also given her access to information that saved millions of lives. Her accidental infiltration of the enemy's most secret facility had provided intelligence that conventional reconnaissance could never have obtained. In the intelligence community, Amy's mission became known as the accidental victory, proof that sometimes the most valuable intelligence comes from being in the right place at the right time, even when that place is the last place you wanted to be. The underground facility was later converted into a museum, with Amy serving as the primary consultant for exhibits that educated visitors about the importance of intelligence work in preventing conflicts from escalating beyond control. Years later, Amy reflected that her career's most important contribution had come not from careful planning or sophisticated operations, but from a simple decision to hide in a cave when she had nowhere else to go. The enemy's most secret weapon had been hidden underground, but it took someone who was also underground, accidentally and unwillingly, to discover it and prevent its use. Captain Amy Carter had fallen into a cave trying to save her own life. She emerged 12 days later, having saved millions of others.